Did you know that a man who never lost a single battle built one of the largest empires in history? Before the age of 33, his name was Alexander the Great, a king, a warrior, and a legend whose ambition knew no limits. From the rugged mountains of Macedonia to the vast deserts of Egypt, from the heart of Persia to the edges of India, he marched with an unstoppable vision, not just to conquer the world, but to unite it. But behind the glory, behind the victories, was a story filled with ambition, power, betrayal, and a mysterious end that shocked the world. How did a young prince rise so quickly to become the ruler of most of the known world, and more importantly, how did it all come crashing down? This is not just a story of conquest, this is the rise and the fall of a legend. If you love powerful history stories like this, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Dynasty History, and share your thoughts in the comments, because the greatest stories of the past are waiting to be told. The story of Alexander the Great does not begin with conquest. It begins with a boy born in 356 BCE in the rugged kingdom of Macedon, a land often looked down upon by the more civilized Greek city-states. But this was no ordinary child. His father, Philip II of Macedon, was a brilliant and ruthless king, a man who had already begun transforming Macedon into a military powerhouse. And his mother, Olympias, was fiercely ambitious, deeply spiritual, and believed her son was destined for greatness. From a young age, Alexander was told something extraordinary, that he was not just a prince, but the son of a god. This belief, whether truth or myth, would shape everything. As a child, Alexander showed signs of something different, something intense. One of the most famous stories comes from a wild horse named Bucephalus. No one could tame the beast. It was powerful, uncontrollable, dangerous. Even seasoned warriors failed. But the young Alexander stepped forward. He noticed something others had not. The horse was afraid of its own shadow, so he turned it toward the sun, calmed it, and mounted it. In that moment, he didn't just tame a horse, he proved something far greater. His father, Philip, watched in amazement and said, "My son, seek a kingdom equal to yourself, for Macedon is too small for you." And perhaps he was right to shape his mind as well as his strength. Alexander was taught by one of the greatest thinkers in history, Aristotle. Under Aristotle, he learned philosophy, science, medicine, and the works of Homer. He became deeply inspired by heroes like Achilles, warriors who sought not just victory, but eternal glory. And Alexander would carry that dream with him forever. By the age of 16, while his father was away at war, Alexander was already ruling as regent. When a rebellion broke out, he didn't hesitate. He crushed it swiftly, and founded a city, naming it after himself. It was the first of many, but his true destiny would come sooner than expected. In 336 BCE, his father, Philip II, was assassinated. Just like that, the young prince became king. He was only 20 years old, and his kingdom was surrounded by enemies. The Greek city-states saw an opportunity. They believed this young king would be weak, inexperienced, easy to defeat. They were wrong. Alexander moved with terrifying speed. When the city of Thebes rebelled, he marched south and destroyed it completely. The city was burned, its people enslaved, a brutal message sent to all of Greece. Speed, strategy, and an unshakable belief in his destiny. The first major clash came at the Battle of the Granicus River. The Persian forces waited on the opposite bank, confident in their position, but Alexander did something unexpected. He attacked immediately, charging across the river under heavy resistance, leading from the front, risking his own life. It was chaotic, brutal, but in the end, it was a victory, and it sent a message to the world. Alexander was not just a king, he was a warrior. As he moved deeper into Persian territory, cities began to fall one by one. Some surrendered peacefully, others resisted, and those who resisted paid the price. At the city of Tyre, one of the strongest fortresses of the ancient world, Alexander faced a challenge unlike any before. The city stood on an island, surrounded by water, nearly impossible to reach. But Alexander did the impossible. He built a massive causeway, a bridge of stone and earth, stretching across the sea. It took months, endless labor, constant attacks, but eventually, he reached the walls. Tyre fell. And once again, The world watched in shock. Then came Egypt, unlike others. Egypt welcomed him. They saw him not as a conqueror, but as a liberator from Persian rule. He was crowned pharaoh, and declared the son of the god Ammonius. It was here that Alexander founded one of his greatest cities, Alexandria, a city that would become a center of culture, learning, and power for centuries. But Alexander did not stay. His journey was far from over. The ultimate confrontation came at the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC. This was no small battle. This was war on a massive scale. Darius III had gathered a vast army, far larger than Alexander's war elephants, chariots, thousands upon thousands of soldiers. The odds were overwhelming, but Alexander thrived on the impossible. Using brilliant tactics, he created a gap in the Persian lines, and charged directly toward Darius himself. Seeing this, the Persian king lost his nerve, and fled the battlefield, and with that, the Persian Empire began to collapse. Babylon, Susa, Persepolis, one by one, they fell. Alexander stood at the height of his power. He had done what no one thought possible. He had conquered the greatest empire in the world. But for Alexander, it was not enough. Victory did not satisfy him. It drove him further. He pushed east, into lands unknown to the Greeks, into Central Asia, and beyond. His army followed. But the journey became harder. The battles became more brutal. The resistance more fierce, and slowly, something began to change. Alexander, the brilliant leader, began to transform. He adopted Persian customs, wore their clothing, demanded to be treated as a god. To some, it felt like betrayal. To others, it felt like madness. Tensions grew within his own ranks. Even his closest companions were not safe. In a moment of rage, he killed his trusted general Clitus the Black, a man who had once saved his life. It was a turning point. The conqueror was beginning to lose control. Still, he marched on, eventually reaching the edge of the known world, India. There, at the Battle of the Hydaspes River, he faced King Porus. It was one of his toughest battles. War elephants thundered across the battlefield. His army faced something they had never seen before. But once again, Alexander adapted, and when impressed by Porus's bravery, he allowed him to remain king. It showed that even in conquest, Alexander could respect strength. But his army had reached its limit. They were exhausted, far from home, tired of endless war. When Alexander demanded they march further into India, they refused. For the first time, he could not move forward. Reluctantly, he turned back, and that was the beginning of the end. The journey home was devastating, crossing harsh deserts, facing starvation, disease, and death. Many soldiers did not survive. The dream of endless conquest had taken its toll. In 323 BCE, Alexander returned to Babylon. He was only 32 years old, at the peak of his power, ruler of an empire stretching from Greece to India. And then, suddenly, he fell ill. Fever, weakness, silence. Days passed, his condition worsened, and then he died just like that. No clear cause, no final words that could save his empire, only a legend. Cut short after his death, everything he built began to fall apart. His generals, known as the Diadochi, turned against each other. Wars broke out. The empire was divided, and the dream of unity vanished. But even in death, Alexander's legacy lived on. He had changed the world, spread Greek culture across vast lands, founded cities that would last for centuries, and inspired generations to come. The rise of Alexander was swift, unstoppable, almost divine. But his fall reminds us of something deeper, that even the greatest conquerors are still human, driven by ambition, shaped by power, and ultimately, bound by time. And perhaps that is what makes his story unforgettable. And so, the story of Alexander the Great comes to an end. A man who rose from a young prince to the ruler of one of the greatest empires the world had ever seen, only to leave it behind, without a clear successor, without a lasting unity, and without ever seeing how his legacy would truly unfold. His empire shattered, his generals turned against each other, and the dream of a united world faded into history. But even today, thousands of years later, his name still echoes through time, not just as a conqueror, but as a symbol of ambition, vision, and the price of limitless power. Because the story of Alexander is not just about victory, it's about how far a human can go, before everything begins to fall apart. So what do you think? Was Alexander truly great, or was he simply a man consumed by his own ambition? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I read them all, and if you enjoyed this journey through history, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Dynasty History, and turn on notifications, because here, we bring the greatest stories of the past back to life. Until next time, this is Dynasty History, where history is not just told, it's felt.